Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you. Apologies for the delay. We are still waiting for one of the panelists, but have decided to kick it off. And when the minister arrives, he will join the panel as we speak. So it's wonderful to have this opportunity to discuss a topic that we believe will be absolutely crucial going forward if we are to deal with the key crisis that we are all facing: food security, climate change, and the environment. The food system, the agriculture and food sector, plays a key role, obviously, in feeding the people, but obviously also in our attempt to really tackle climate change in a meaningful way. The food system produces nearly 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions around the planet. This does not have to be the case. Food can be produced with a lower footprint if we choose to do so. And many examples are out there. We will hear some of them during this session. And I think this is very important in the context of how do we in the world, around the world, support our farmers. The title of this session is Repurposing or Redirecting the Current Agricultural Subsidies and the Current Agricultural Support that is provided by countries around the world. Currently, globally, governments spend about $800 billion per year, nearly $1 trillion per year, to support their farmers. And let us be clear, this is important and it needs to continue. Farmers around the world need support. They need it more than ever because they are impacted by climate change. They need to produce food for more people. There is no doubt about it. This is not a discussion about reducing agricultural subsidies. Let me say this at the outset. This is a discussion about if you spend $800 billion per year, is it spent in a way that, yes, helps your farmers, that, yes, produces high quality and sufficient food for all, but at the same time also reduces the footprint and builds resilience into the farming communities around the world? And the answer is right now, we're not there. We are absolutely not there. The current agricultural subsidy balance, if you wish, that more than 80% of those $800 billion right now don't deliver on those goods. Yes, they help the farmer's income. Yes, they help them get cheaper fertilizer. They do certain things, but they do not at the same time reduce the climate impact and build resilience. And I think this is the key conversation to have. We live at a time of fiscal constraint. Everybody who is in government in the audience knows exactly what I mean. Every dollar right now counts. So this is a time where we need to have this conversation. This is a time where we need to step back and ask, how can we repurpose what we give to farmers in a way, still giving it to farmers, but for a different outcome? Yes, more food. This is not to produce less food. Let's make no mistake. Everybody knows we need to produce more food. But we can do it in a way that's different. And I think that's what this conversation is. So we have invited a panel of 4 ministers from different countries, all of them leaders in their own countries, having these conversations, who will share with us in a minute their own experiences, good practice examples. How can you do that without having the tractors and the farmers and the street and the consumers going into overdrive? How can you do this in a way where you can get a win-win-win? Because if we don't make progress on this, we will not be able to deal with climate change. And we will have a situation where a huge amount of taxpayer money is not delivered purposefully. Before we get to the panel, they will join me up on the stage in a second. We will hear some welcoming comments and opening remarks by the Minister of Agriculture of Germany, Cem Özdemir. He has a video contribution here. Thank you.
Vice President Vögele, Minister Harrison, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to welcome you in Berlin today for the high-level debate on redirecting agriculture policies and support to address climate change. This debate has been organized by my team at the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture, together with the World Bank and the British Foreign Office. Today we are looking back at the 2021 Global Forum for Food and Agriculture. In the face of the pandemic and the climate crisis, it focused on global food security. Food security is once again at the heart of this year's GFFA. After all, the question of how we can realize the right to food worldwide is more pressing than ever. World hunger, unfortunately, continues to rise. Russia's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine has aggravated the already precarious food situation in many countries around the world. This war has led to distortions on international agricultural markets. It has revealed one-sided import dependencies with disastrous consequences, particularly in countries already suffering from the climate crisis. We cannot carry on as before if we, the international community, want to achieve zero hunger by 2030. We need sustainable, resilient, climate-smart food systems that can resist multiple crises. For example, the intensifying climate crisis, the extinction of species, the still tangible consequences of the pandemic, and the many wars and conflicts around the globe. Such a comprehensive transformation of our food systems can only be achieved if we tackle the challenge together through international collaboration. There are many initiatives, activities, and international agreements that give cause for hope. One example is the policy dialogue on accelerating the transition to sustainable agriculture through repurposing public support and scaling up innovation. This policy dialogue was launched by the UK and the World Bank during the 2021 GFFA, and it is the focus of today's panel. Germany has supported this dialogue and its aims since the very beginning. And as one of the 17 lead countries, we also signed the policy action agenda for sustainable agriculture launched at the COP26. Through sharing evidence and practical experience on policy measures that work for sustainable agriculture, a policy dialogue offers an important platform to raise collective ambition and facilitate support for nationally appropriate commitment to policy reforms that will help achieve the SDGs, Paris Agreement, and biodiversity targets. The EU's agricultural reform and its implementation in Germany are also steps in this direction. This reform has focused public agricultural support more strongly on sustainability. Germany also welcomes the agriculture breakthrough. This was launched by Great Britain as part of the breakthrough agenda. The Sharm el-Sheikh joint work on the implementation of climate action on agriculture and food security. The key agreement on agriculture and food security reached at the UN's COP27 World Climate Conference also gives cause for hope. We must now build on the results on the Cononivia joint work on agriculture and implement the results worldwide. Another piece of good news is the global agreement on the protection, sustainable use and restoration of nature adopted at the United Nations Biodiversity Conference in Montreal. This agreement is the international community's first shield for our national resources. And finally, I would like to mention the Food and Agriculture Sustainable Transformation Initiative. It was launched on the sidelines of the COP27 by the Egyptian COP presidency and the FAO. This initiative aims to link all existing and planned international agricultural climate initiatives. Germany has joined this initiative, and I would like to encourage all of you to join as well. After all, the chances of this initiative being a success grow with each new member. Looking back at the 2021 GFFA, a lot has been achieved, but we also still have a long way to go, and time is pressing. Germany will take concrete steps to transform our food systems. At the same time, I hope that we can all make progress together. I would now like to wish you a productive exchange and every success for today's panel.
I do think this deserves a round of applause. The Minister personally, you can tell, very committed to this agenda. Germany has provided the platform, as he said 2 years ago, where we had this initial conversation together with the UK to make this a part of a high-level discussion. And Germany continues to support this policy action agenda financially, so together with the UK. And hopefully we will get more support. In the last 2 years, there have been policy discussions and support in over 40 countries. Going forward, we want to expand that. Germany has again provided additional support. So this is going in a good direction, but as Minister Özdemir said, time is of the essence. It has to happen now. Really, these conversations have to take place. And now we start with our panelists. Please join me up on the podium here. We have, please, Mariam and Judy and the Minister from Malawi. We will be joined by the Minister of Agriculture from Bangladesh, I hope, in due course, once he's able to beat the traffic, I'm told, which is not easy in Berlin, I guess. So with that, let me kick it off. I think everyone is now kind of clear what the next 60 or 70 minutes should be all about. It's really sharing experience, sharing the challenge, sharing the approaches, sharing practical examples from your own countries of how do you deal with this wicked problem of agricultural subsidies that has the potential to do so much more than what it does right now. And maybe let's start with Malawi. Malawi is a country that is, or the farmers in Malawi are very seriously impacted by climate change. So of course the government needs to be supportive, and you are. So maybe you can share a little bit how you think about this in the context of this session.
Yeah, thank you. The impact has been very significant. Last year, for the first time in so many years, we did experience lots of flooding especially the southern part of the country because of climate change. 2 cyclones hit us pretty bad. That also affected the amount of food we harvested. On top of that, we've also experienced the decline in food production because of not sustainable way of farming. Right now, we are focusing on how can we make the land that we have more productive. First of all, building on the previous meetings, coming up with policies that will enable us to achieve that. That's why this year, last year, we did change some of the laws to enable the players in the agriculture industry to invest properly and to also conserve the environment and to be more productive. We have been talking about how we can engage even the use of different types of fertilizers. The interesting part has been encouraging people to diversify from chemical fertilizer and also organic fertilizer. The reason why we are talking about this is we realize that we can have equipment, we can have the fertilizer, but if we don't look after the soil, everything is going to be futile. Our country, the pH levels in the soil are completely bad. So we are looking at how we can balance the pH levels and also put more organic components into the soil to increase productivity without neglecting the climate change elements in everything that we are doing. We have started doing a number of things, the policy changes, but also practically work with small-scale farmers, medium-scale farmers, as we are investing in mega farms to increase production by looking at different ways of increasing productivity while we are conserving the environment and putting back nutrients into the soil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you very much. This is Sam Kawale, Minister of Agriculture from Malawi, and as you can tell, there is a very clear and specific and concrete debate going on. How do you get support to farmers in a way that helps them increase productivity, but at the same time helps them build resilience, helps them use fertilizer in the most effective way? Round of applause for the minister. Otherwise we sit here all afternoon listening. Thank you. Let me now turn to the Minister for Natural Environment and Land Use of the United Kingdom, Your Excellency Trudy Harrison. You're not exactly the agriculture minister, but you care about the agenda a lot, I understand. So maybe let's hear what the UK is discussing in this context. Oh, yes, please. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us. He beat the traffic.
And of course, as the Minister of the Natural Environment, my interests are in biodiversity, forestry, healthy soil, clean air, pure water. And when 70% of the land across the UK is farmed, farming is absolutely my priority. And it's a personal priority because I'm from a farming family. My granddad farmed, my uncle's farm. I live in a farming community in the English Lake District. Farmers are facing change, and it's up to us whether that's going to be positive or negative change, because change is happening. And I think it's really important to set out that in the UK, this has been a very holistic programme of works. The Climate Change Act 2008, the Environment Act, the commitment to net zero, were all agreed. And then we've also gone further just very recently with some legal targets and some ambitious moral targets around those air, soil and water quality aspects, and also things like trebling tree planting to ensure that England is covered by 16.5% of trees. So those are really important targets. And the thing that is so important, as Jürgen has already identified, it's not removing subsidy, it's changing subsidy. So it rewards farmers for environmental improvements and for the part that they play in climate change, adaptation and mitigation, and of course maintaining food security, which in the UK is about 62% or 75% of the available foods we can grow. So we are maintaining that £2.4 billion of farm subsidy in England. We're supplementing that with about £270 million over 7 years on innovation. But what we're doing is moving towards ELMS, the Environmental Land Management Schemes. That includes a sustainable farming incentive, countryside stewardship plus, and a landscape recovery. For this to work, for us to achieve our now legal targets, we need our farmers to take part in these schemes at a rate of 75%. So 75% of farmers, we hope, will be involved with these environmental schemes across England. So it's really important that we communicate. It's a holistic programme of support, providing free veterinary visits. It's focusing on animal health. It's also really focusing on business support and farmer-to-farmer business support. At COP15, my Secretary of State, Therese Coffey, along with many other countries, committed to that 30 by 30, protecting 30% of land and sea by 2030. And we've already committed to that in England as well. So the fact that 30% of the land will be protected, we've also got a farming in protected landscapes scheme as well, dedicated to those SSSI and other forms of land protection. So that's what we're doing in the UK. It's holistic, and it really is an honour to be here today speaking with like-minded people. I'm very much looking forward to COP28 and the collaboration that I know is already underway with UAE, but this really is the greatest team effort of our lives.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Minister Harrison. I think you hit it really on the head, right? Farmers want to be environmentally conscious. They want to do the right thing. The role of the government is to support them in that and reinforce the positive aspects of farming that are there for the environment, for climate, of course, for food security, rather than ignoring it or reinforcing it in a negative way, which is unfortunately what's still happening with a lot of the subsidy scheme. So this is practical, this is real, like what you described, not uncontroversial. As we all know, this is not easy, but it's doable. And I think that's what we need to hear and get the confidence and leadership. You mentioned COP28, so let me turn to Her Excellency Mariam. She used to be Minister of Food Security, Now, she is Minister of Climate Change and Environment, which is fantastic to have her, with a food security background, leading into COP28. So I'd love to hear from you how the UAE is thinking about this topic.
Thank you so much, Jürgen. And the good thing is, I've taken the food security file into the climate change ministry, so we're taking care of all those pillars, including nature protection, waste, combating waste, etc. So I've got that all under one ministry, which really helps. So yes, it's an exciting year for us. COP28 is going to happen at the end of November, and I just want to make sure you all know that food systems will have center stage, just as the energy dialogue is going to have. This is important because of all the things that were mentioned on our previous panel, and also the speakers here on this panel. We've already started from the UN food systems, going to COP27, as His Excellency Cem Özdemir mentioned also in his speech. We've got to keep that momentum going, and that's why it's so important that at COP28, food systems transformation, because we all know or the systems are actually emitting 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions, so it should be our business. Yeah. And for me, what's really important is, what are the solutions that we're going to come up with? And to be able to talk about that, even when I sit with experts or lovers of food systems transformation, it's how do we define success for food systems transformation? This is what we have to think about. And I know, Jürgen, we've had a lot of discussions on this. If we cannot define what success in food systems transformation is, how are we going to measure if we are successful or not? So what we've done as well is we've started a lot of consultation meetings at UNGA, at COP27, in Montreal at COP15, just to sit with like-minded people, experts, NGOs, governments, to kind of define a framework of what this multilateral framework for food systems transformation, what is success for food systems transformation. Now, I want to give you some examples of what we've done in the UAE, because I think it's really important we look at some solutions. Just to describe to you what our landscape is with food and agriculture. We are a country that is water scarce. We have less than 5% arable land. Our food security comes from the ability to import food. We grow 10% of our food. And we are also, sadly, one of the high wasters of food. Because for me, what's important is when we look at food systems, it's not just what we grow and produce, but also the consumer behavior. Now, in 2017, when I became Minister of State for Food Security, our leadership said, we need a plan, we need to adopt technology, and we need to really enhance research and development. So off we went, developed a strategy for the country, set up a council to oversee the implementation of the strategy. And where we are today is, first of all, the UAE has jumped down the ladder towards #1 at the Global Food Security Index. This is how we measure. So we're on 23rd spot. The year before we were, it was 42. So it's a big jump, which we're very happy about. We started exporting the technologies that we're adopting in the UAE to other countries that have similar ecosystems and similar weather temperatures or weather conditions. And today, when you're living in the UAE and you go to the supermarkets, you find salmon that's grown locally, you find blueberries that's grown locally. And it's so amazing when you can see how, when you harness technology and innovation, what that can actually do. And when you see this, this is when you get excited about solutions that are available that you can bring to the table and say, yes, we're in trouble with the climate agenda, but the food systems that are causing a big problem for us are also a solution. So going into this transformation, the UAE really wants to put the solutions on the table. We want to showcase what we're doing in the desert, circulating the water in farms using we call them closed environment agriculture, CEAs, and you can have the vertical farms, and it can go from low tech all the way to high tech. And when you can see what you can actually grow with these technologies, it's really unbelievable. And by the way, the young people, and it's so good to see so many young people here, get really excited about this. I don't call them farmers anymore, I call them agri-technologists, giving them a new name, because we've got to get them excited about this new way of farming, a new way of systems innovation.
Great, thank you. Wonderful to see the portfolio of the minister so integrated. I wish we had more of that around the world, that the same team thinks holistically, because these things are all interconnected, and when they come together, you get a very different outcome. Second point you made, which I think is hugely important, is the role of technology. Not just any technology, but technology for a purpose. Technology that, yes, produces food, but by design and by definition does so with a low footprint. I think this is very important to understand. There's a huge discussion around agricultural technology everywhere. All of it is exciting. Not all of it's very good for the planet. And I think it's very important to drive these conversations very deliberately around what do we mean by innovation and technology and research, because it can go in different ways. With that, Minister, very, very good to have you here. Dr. Mohammad Razaki, that's the right pronunciation, I hope.
Rajak.
There you go.
It's okay.
So you came last simply because I wanted to give you a few minutes to get the gist of the conversation. What we'd love to hear from you is, how does Bangladesh think about the future of its agriculture support program for its farmers, its agriculture subsidy program, and how are you thinking about reorienting some of that funding in a way that also gets you the global public goods? Over to you, Minister.
Thank you. I thank World Bank and FCDO for inviting me to speak to such a learned and enlightened audience. I offer my sincere gratitude to the distinguished panelists and other distinguished participants. Agriculture has been one of the important drivers of growth and rural development in Bangladesh. It accounts 12% of the GDP. It employs 38% of our labor forces. And it's the main source of food and nutrition security. It also provides raw materials to industries. Growth to the contribution to the GDP, it was as high as 40 to 50%. Over time, it has been declining, which is quite expected. It has come down to 12%, but we consider that the importance of agriculture will never diminish and is still increasing. It offers tremendous resilience to shocks such as pandemic and man-made conflicts. You know, in Bangladesh, shock or any natural disaster, agriculture plays a very vital role. At least we have to ensure food security to the people. Bangladesh has been a food deficit country historically, and we suffered many famine, semi-famine. In 1943, during Second World War, more than 3 million people died. And others, famine, semi-famine, always happened in Bangladesh. But these days, Bangladesh, we claim, we are self-sufficient food, at least in cereals, rice, which is the staple food in Bangladesh. In any conflict or any natural disaster, if we can ensure food security, we can provide enough food to the people, then we consider that situation is stable, politically sound, and a kind of resilience, it comes from agriculture. The first wave of agriculture transformation happened with the reforms initiated by Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, our founding father of the nation, in 1972, which practically steered green revolution in the country. The second wave of transformation began with the consolidation of our reinvigoration of reforms with dynamic leadership of the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina during 1996 to 2001. And in 2008 to 2018, following the footprints of the father of the nation. The country, as I said, became self-sufficient in rice for the first time in 1999-2000 and started agri diversification in 2009 and onward. Agriculture growth has accelerated to over 4% in current years, while we have been enjoying overall economic growth to about 8+. And on average, in last 14 years, we have been achieving 6+ or almost close to 7+ growth. We have increased our cereal production by 4 times. It was 11 million ton in 1972, and we have increased it to 45 million tons at the moment. Let me give an example how we have been progressing in agriculture. 7-time increase of vegetable production since 2008. In 2008, our production was only 3 million ton of vegetables. We consider high-value crops and nutritious crops. Now it's 22 million ton, almost 7 times in 13 years' time. Production of fruits, pulses, meat, fish, eggs, milk has also increased manifolds. We are third in rice production, second in vegetable production, in jute third, in fish fourth at global level. One of the top 10 agri-food producing countries of the world. However, challenges are there. Scarce land. 60% of the land area is under cultivation, while United Arab Emirates says they have only 5% of the total land for cultivation. Cropping intensity is close to 3. That means that we grow about almost 3 crops from a unit of a land, from a plot. Cropping intensity is so high. At least 2 crops from all plots. Increase in 2 million. Every year we are adding 2 million people to our total already highly populous country. Climate stresses and impacts. With climate change or without change, our challenge is same, because Bangladesh is extremely vulnerable to disaster like recurrent flood, cyclone, drought, storms, and so on. And impacts of COVID pandemic and conflicts across the globe created by man. Challenges associated with graduation from LDC to DC. United Nations has assessed us that we will be given the status of developing country, but it's also a challenge. We will be deprived of many benefits and facilities we have been enjoying, so we have to address that also. Second, third wave of agricultural transformation that government is pursuing now needs to cater the essence of doubling productivity. That's one of the requirements of SDG. Doubling income, reduce wastage, sustainability, intensification, and diversification in the light of SDG and GOV vision for smart and developed Bangladesh by 2041. The third wave of agricultural transformation features transformation of subsistence to commercialization. Historically, Bangladesh agriculture is highly subsistence agriculture. But we are in a transit, or we are transforming our subsistence agriculture to commercial agriculture. Multi-bag productivity, stresses. Stresses like salinity. 25% of the land area is coastal and highly prone to salinity. Our scientists are evolving variety which can be grown in saline conditions, saline resistance. And some of the newly evolved variety, they're doing excellent. They're doing very good. But we have to expedite the adaptation. We want to make our agriculture profitable, from subsistence to profitable agriculture. Our farmers these days, they are growing vegetables, fruits, which can be exported, and we can get more price and make it profitable. Resilient to shocks, as I said, climate, disasters, and pandemic. In a pandemic like COVID-19, we did very good. There was a lot of apprehension that there will be a famine, people will die, there will be dead body on the street. But nobody died, nobody suffered from hunger. We could supply adequate food. We want to make that is the challenge now. We have to ensure supply of nutrition and safe food to our people. And we can do that by enhancing the income of the farmers. And towards that goal, we have initiated many programs and policy support we are also giving. Investing in agro-processing and value chain development, youth and women entrepreneurship. Educated youth, these days they're coming in agriculture, in farming, and they're going with high-value crops, vegetables, fish farming, poultry farming, dairy farming. And these days, we are using technologies, modern technologies, latest innovation, which has enhanced the productivity. We have been pursuing the diamodal system of marketing, both for domestic and international market. Last fiscal year, our earning from export, it was close to $2 billion, and it's growing quite fast. We are trying to digitalize our agriculture, precision nanotechnology, fourth industrial revolution. Although we are much behind, but still we did very good in digitalization of overall economic system of the country. For materializing the transformation, we require increased investment in agriculture, rural infrastructure, agriculture research and development, and strengthening extension services. Regarding agriculture research and development, our national agriculture research system quite strong, sound, and they're doing a good job. They are coming up with new technologies. We are very much linked with international communities in obtaining latest technologies in agriculture, latest innovation. We have taken up project for expanding coverage of hybrids, stress-tolerant varieties, water harvesting and enhancing irrigation efficiency. Bangladesh is very fortunate that we have very good aquifer. Just 15, 20 feet, you can get fresh water, which is very good, suitable for drinking and also for irrigation and growing crops. But efficiency of water is quite low. So these days we are focusing on enhance the efficiency of all inputs, fertilizer, chemicals, and also water. Modernization and mechanization. We are in a transit. We are transforming our traditional agriculture to modern agriculture, mechanized agriculture. Plowing totally now it's done with not human or animal power. It's totally it's mechanized. Then harvesting, we are in a process. We have implementing a project where we are giving 50 to 70% subsidy to the agriculture, for agricultural implements. If a farmer buy a combine harvester, we give 50% as subsidy. For unfavorable area, like coastal area or hill area, we give 70%. If it is $1,000, we give $500. And for harsh condition, adverse condition, we give 70%. Introduce GAP, good agricultural practices, strengthening labs and human capacities, processing storage, and treatments. We have adopted a GAP policy, good agricultural practices policies. We are also trying to get global GAP endorsement. Crop zoning, we are doing crop zoning. Some areas are suitable for certain crops, high-value crops, vegetable or fruits. And also adaptation of low and carbon emission technologies. We have set up agriculture economic zone for agro-processing, where we are giving some incentive so that entrepreneurs come and set up agro-processing industries. And already we have started, and they are setting up modern agro-processing industries and enhancing the value chains for more profit. World Bank and IFAD supporting a partner project program is underway. It's in a process. We are expecting that we'll go for implementation or commencement in next June, July. The project is for transformation of agriculture and rural development transformation for nutrition, entrepreneurship, and resilience. And where we need support of a global community, support from our development partners, with not much with funding, we need more support, more assistance, technological support, technical support. That's important at the moment for Bangladesh. We have adequate foreign exchange reserve, adequate funds. Without support from our development partner, we have implemented a project called Padda Bridge, which was supposed to be supported by World Bank, but somehow, for some reason, they withdrawn. But with our own fund, we spent more than $4 billion for implementing that Padda Bridge project. So fund is not a major constraint, but it's not in good program, good policies, and for implementation of this project. And there we need support from global, from our developed partners. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much. So you got a comprehensive summary of the journey of agriculture in Bangladesh since the 1970s, and that's important. I think this was long, but it's important to understand that this takes time and it's a journey. When you have a huge population and very little resources, you got to first feed the people. I think that's what Bangladesh is going through. But once you've achieved that, you diversify. I think that was your message. Then you go into fruits, vegetables. That diversifies your income, increases your income, but it also gives you better nutritional outcomes, which is precisely the kind of support one would hope the government gives to the farmers, so that they diversify, yes, income increase, and their diversification. Of course, the focus then has to be to do this in a very sustainable way. I have another round of questions for the panelists, but I will not use them now, but open it up for a bit of an interactive conversation. Otherwise, it's a dark room and it's afternoon, so we don't want you to lean back too comfortably. Maybe not opening up for questions necessarily, but initially there are many experts, other ministers are in the room. If we can hear maybe a few more examples from other countries, now that you've listened to the conversation, the gist of the idea is, what do you do in your countries, in your contexts, in that debate? How do you have a conversation around using the scarce public resources and not only push the production, but really do it in a way that actually gets a sustainable outcome? So I'd love to hear from you. Some interventions. Please feel free. We have a microphone going around. Anyone would like to share your own experience from different countries, backgrounds?
Hi there.
Yes, hello, in the corner.
Hi, my name is James Longenecker. I'm from the United States.
Okay.
And I'm from Florida, which is a very populated state that's unfortunately facing a lot of land use transition. And so our agriculture, which used to be a large part of our economy, is diminishing, and more we just have cattle, which is just a proxy for holding land. So land for development. What we've done is, the fortunate thing about the United States is that we have state government and then we have local government. And through using community input and community-led policy meetings, we've been able to focus on new ideas, because as we all know, we've been having these discussions for decades. And it's really nice to have a community participatory inventory so that policies are geared towards problems that people want solutions to. So we all have our ideas of what problems are going on in the world, and sometimes having a participatory and really collaborative decision-making process can steer that policy. I'm on the Rural Concerns Advisory Committee for the county, and what we've found is that actually, as strange as it sounds, microfinance is still working. I mean, you hear about it in developing countries much more than, you know, other countries. But these mini grants have afforded our producers really like it's, I guess, made the difference between producers surviving and not. As we've discussed, small and medium scale producers are much more nimble. And I think that really like strategic decision making and then strategic financing, even though, I mean, we don't have to talk about millions or billions. Tens of thousands of dollars are a lot to our producers, and I think that that's allowed for us, at least in North Central Florida, to have a more robust food system.
Maybe I can ask you a follow-up question. Since you're in the council, you must be discussing this, right? So the industry is also impacted by climate change in Florida. Climate's changing, you get more frequent, more violent hurricanes, etc. Temperatures are changing. Is this a part of the conversation when you ask for support? Because I think that's what we're trying to drive in this dialogue. Okay, as climate impacts us, and also what we can do to help reduce the climate footprint, what kind of support can we give farmers so that they can both get support when they're hit, but also do things differently going forward?
I think that for our producers, we've really pushed diversification. So using, for example, if they're meat producers, then just encouraging them to have, even if it's cows, have multiple different breeds of cows, so then we can select for more robust genetics. And that all ties in, of course, to our extension services and research. So increasing diversity and then increasing diversity of thought. It's very actually hard to find good clearinghouses for ideas and then policies that are there to aid actual producers. It's extremely hard to find resources that are applicable to the types of shifts that we're encountering. We just had a day go from 21 degrees to -5, and so yeah, and then again, collaboration and making sure that the growers are communicating with one another. Something that I wish we had more of is a growers association that then is doing the work connecting to extension rather than having all of the weight on the farmers.
Very good. Look, this is a great example, and thank you for sharing that. When you discuss the cows the next time, it's one thing to have them more resilient, it's another to have them with lower methane emissions. Of course, you cannot do this at the community level. But this is a global challenge. I mean, we talked about research and innovation that I believe personally needs a lot more investment. It is not that difficult to breed ruminant livestock that has a significantly lower emissions profile. I'm talking about the genetics, the feed and additives and all of that has a lot to do with it as well. Okay, let's hear. You have another 2 hands up here, please. 3 hands. Love to hear your experience.
Okay, me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Rizal. I'm come from Indonesia. I'm one of the participant representative in Global Forum in Agriculture for Youth Leaders today. My question directly to be honest, from Bangladesh. So very interesting about highlight and presentations. Actually, in Indonesia, I become ambassadors I'm working for more than 50,000 youth generation in Indonesia. So I hear a lot learning from Bangladesh success story, like, for example, Mr. Muhammad Yunus with Grameen Bank. So can you explain how to capture now? It's this success story we'll still use for now for facing like a solution for after pandemic, because after 10 years maybe or 20 years, like success story, we can to take up the success story model to Indonesia too. Like, so we now focus on 3 sectors: the farmers, and then women and youth generation. That's why I more ask to you more deeply, how about multiple or success story like Grameen Bank can leverage in your countries? Maybe can give me advice and motivation and inspiration for us, like doing as well as. Thank you, Mr. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question, Minister. If you bear with me, we had 3 more hands up. Let's collect a couple of questions, then you can, all the panelists can respond a bit more comprehensively. In the back first, here second, and then here third.
Thank you. My name is Indra Sapkota. I come from Nepal. I've been working with Ministry of Forest and Soil Conservation since 25 years. My concern is about, though I'm working with the forestry sector, but food security and food sovereignty in Nepal is really alarming. Being a very poor country, my data said that we have been importing food and cereals from India and elsewhere, which is about more than 80% of the food we consume. This is a very serious situation that we are facing. In another hand, we do have about 25% of land where we can cultivate. There is a very productive land. All lands are transformed into the barren lands, and they're transformed into the forest, bushes. The reason behind this is we are pretty much unable to retain the farmers to grow the crops. The population dividend is really flowing to the another country as a migration. For example, most of the youth are looking job abroad, and they are going abroad in Middle East and Europe and elsewhere. My concern is here, perhaps hearing the success stories from Bangladesh and UAE, what makes us actually to retain the farmers into the farmland? We do have enough farm, we do have enough productive land, but the problem is migration and urbanization is really alarming, and that is very detrimental to grow the crops in our country. So from your success stories, especially from Bangladesh, and also the success stories from UAE, I just want to hear that what are the measures can be taken to make them promote and also make them that agriculture and farmers are prestigious occupation on that, so that they can remain in the farmland. This is something that I really want to hear from you, all the panelists, respected panelists. Thank you so much.
Very good. How to get the young people to get excited about maybe farming, but maybe business, right? Like you said, maybe it's not back to the farm, maybe it's to open a business in a different way. So we'll hear more about this. Very good question. Please, the floor is yours. Let's give it a second for the microphone. Here.
Arman Khojoyan, the Deputy Minister of Economy of Armenia, and I'm in charge for agriculture sector of Armenia. So my question is to Ms. Al-Maheri. We really had an opportunity to talk about food strategy, food security, and motivated with this, we also initiated the food strategy food security strategy in Armenia. You mentioned about an important topic about measuring a transformation. So how do you measure the transformation? This is a question to you, and I have one more question. It is related maybe to all of the ministers. You know, we are all talking about creating sustainable food systems. But to my understanding, we are living in a period where the global world, our external environment is changing too fast. And we really need not more than sustainable food systems, but resilient food systems. Right. So how do you do in your countries for resiliency of the systems? And if you can point out the main factors that you consider. Thank you much.
Thank you very much. Resilience is a part of sustainability increasingly, so I think that's a very, very clear point. And how do you keep track? How do you monitor? Right? Emily, please, the floor is yours. Sorry, I had him first. Why don't we go with you first, since you already have the microphone and you're standing, and then we'll come here.
Thank you so much. My name is Lamin Fofana from Sierra Leone. I'm the Executive Director for United for the Protection of Human Rights Advocacy Network. And I've been working on the food productivities and also climate change for the past 9 years. But I believe the war in Ukraine have really opened the door, maybe we can say the Pandora boxes, which we have already seen the deteriorating of how the global leaders have been attending to most of the food productivities. Today, we believe there is a whole lot we need to do, even though it's not a question per se. Maybe I would like to add 1 or 2 questions to the panelists. But Africa is a place that when we talk about strengthening of food productivities, we have to really look at a whole lot of things, because I really want to say that the system we are using today in terms of food productivities is a broken system. And one thing is that I can say it's a very good that we have an exchange like this today, because there is a whole lot of things we are not thinking of. Like from Sierra Leone, the country I'm coming, and agriculture has been one of the things that we have been neglecting, because we don't pay much emphasis on it, simply because the war contributed a great where people have to migrate from the rural to the urban, and which in terms of farming became something else. So, and that's what we are seeing today. People are migrating from all over the world in different areas, in different aspects. But when we look at most of the bigger companies today that are walking around, there is no much, I can say there is no much even bigger land within the borders of Europe. But one thing we are neglecting is how we can able to strengthen, because we always keep coming back to the same thing. We always say that it's a global crisis, yes, and which you have 1 or 2 countries that can come together to see if they can able to make a difference in supporting. But we will still keep coming again, because we don't have a solution to it. And what I'm trying to say here is we need to put look at the future. It's not what we are looking at tomorrow or day after tomorrow, but something that we can put together can be an everlasting problem. Today we see Ukraine, and tomorrow we don't know which country might be thinking of invading another country. And this is the most important thing, because Africa has suffered the most, and we are the one that's paying the bigger price of it. When you look at the difference within Africa today is the poorest, and some parts of the Asians, we cannot even provide food for ourselves, so we cannot even feed our own population. But again, there is a whole lot of way we can contribute to the present crisis that we are facing, because we have vast lands in Africa that has not been even touched, and which we are not thinking of them. So these are some of the things we need to start changing the narrative, then how we can able to come together to see how we can strengthen these things. It doesn't mean that it has to be one government, but it has to be everyone in it. You know, the decision we are making as people will also contribute to what we are leaving tomorrow as a legacy. So there is similar way, let me just put it now this way to conclude. And some things we need to do, like by what? We invest financially and also exchange of scientific knowledge. You know, things that you know I don't know. Like today we are seeing brands of technologies and everything. And then we also do practice and technologies for diversity and resilience in food system. Without it, we cannot survive it. And also, again, and better what? SMNE, which is this money that's given to local farmers within the rural. Because I'm coming from a district which is farming is the only thing that we do. If we can support the local farmers, not by giving, because you always have to take the work to the people, because they are the one. You cannot be sitting down and you say you want to make a better change of it. But the people has to be what? They have to involve in it. The sooner the people involve in it, then you have a result at the end of the day. Believe it, we will not be here maybe for the next decade. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's give the microphone here.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the Honorable Minister from the United Arab Emirates. I work for the German Parliament for the Committee of Agriculture. You've met a couple of months before Olaf Scholz and Robert Habeck and Steffi Lemke, and you have shown them the mangrove forest. How do you see a cooperation between Germany and the UAE in terms of this whole topic of agricultural sustainability? And the second question, quite obviously, the UAE is very much interested in promoting this whole issue of sustainability. You're hosting the World Climate Conference this year. You had this Global Food Tech Challenge recently. Do you see the UAE as a coming global leader in terms of digitalization, in terms of smart farming, in terms of sustainability? Because usually we associate more European countries and Western countries with this issue. Thank you very much.
Very good. So let me turn, do I see more hands up? I'll come to you in a second round, okay? To both of you. Let me, otherwise we're getting a bit too complex. So let me turn it back to the panel. Lots of questions for the UAE, so I'll start with Minister Al-Mahiri. And then we'll work our way down here, talk about Africa, talk about some of the other questions that have come up. So over to you.
Thank you. So I've summed a few things, so I think in a way I'll be answering a few questions at the same time, I hope. Success stories. You know, we're always talking about innovation, and for me, innovation is not just an innovative product, it's thinking in an innovative way and taking a systematic approach. We have 35,000 farmers in the UAE. Their land space is 1 to 2 hectares, very small, very, very different to many other agricultural countries. Now, the issue I had with them, the UAE is food secure because of its power to import food. So the farmers told me, Mariam, we need, you need to put up barriers for the traders, you need to protect, you need to put quota systems. And I said, we cannot do that because our food security actually comes from our ability to import food. So what we did is the following. I started to look around who are the national companies, the ones that have government procurement power, who order a lot of food. This, the police, the army, ADNOC, our national oil company. And I sat with each of the CEOs and I said, how much food do you buy a year? And from where do you get this food from? And I made them sign a pledge. We agreed on a list of 10 items that I knew these were items that the farmers could supply in the UAE. So I basically made a market for the farmers without touching the trade. So this is an ongoing project. We just launched this at the end of December. But this is just an example of how a country such as the UAE who imports most of its food, does not want to touch trade and does not want to put up barriers for trade, because we believe in we need to keep it all open, because in a crisis, it's really important to do that. Then, what's really important when you think about being resilient for a crisis, we went through COVID, and we had just announced our food security strategy. We just put up the council that implements the strategy, and COVID hit. And we said, oh boy, here we go. We need to test now our strategy. And it was so good. It was such a learning lesson for us, because what we did is we made sure the local production is adopting technology. We made sure we were diversifying from where we're getting our food from. We made sure we put awareness programs to kind of get people to look at what they're putting in the bin and reduce their food loss and food waste, nudge better behavior when it comes to buying foods. Don't get distracted by things like buy one, get two more free with that, because at the end of the day, it mostly goes to waste. So these are really important that, I mean, every country has its own challenges and has to think about how you can make sure you're also food secure in the future. And again, we're a country that imports most of our food, so the way we go about it would be very different than, for example, in the UK. So it's really important that you have a plan, you have the leadership. Then I come to partnerships, and Sir from Sir Leon, who mentioned as well how important it is for technology adoption and partnerships. I went to Secretary Vilsack in the US, the Minister of Agriculture of the US, and I said to him, I said, Sir Vilsack, we want to do something on agriculture and innovation with you. And he's like, why would the UAE want to partner with the US on something on agriculture? You guys don't do agriculture. We said, why we want to come together with you is we want to develop a vehicle, a global vehicle to drive innovation, to drive climate resilient food systems. And he understood that what we wanted to partner on is driving innovations and food system transformation. COP26, the initiative was announced. This is Aim for Climate, Aim for C, as some of you may know it. And today, I'm proud to say we have 278 partners on board, government and NGOs. We've got over 30 innovation sprints. These are basically with private sector, and over $8 billion in investment commitments to drive this transformation. So I want to invite your government to please approach us and come on board on Aim for C, because there's a lot of exchange we can do on that note. Targets, measuring targets. The gentleman from Armenia, we have a strategy. We've got very clear targets. We have about 18 KPIs, and we also compare ourselves with competitive targets, such as the Global Food Security Index. And with that, I'll stop. And give
right, Mariam, don't stop yet. Maybe a few additional thoughts on the question from Nepal. How do you keep the young people excited? Because I know this is a space. You are innovating in COP after 27 years. You have, for the first time, maybe I should let you explain that, you have a youth ambassador going into COP28.
So the UAE already understood from a very early stage that the voice of youth is really important. So since 2016, we have a Minister of Youth. At that time, she was appointed, she was 21 years old. And she came into the government, and now she has placed policies and, let's say, ways of doing things. So, for example, whenever I have a policy and I need it to get approved by the cabinet, it needs to go through the youth to be able to get approved. Yeah. And because of this, when we were thankfully nominated to host COP28, we spoke to the UNFCCC and we said, not only do we want a high-level climate champion who is responsible for the NGOs or the non-state actors, we also want a high-level youth climate champion. And so for the first time in the process of the climate conference, we have now a youth climate champion, and she will be spearheading basically the voices of the youth all around the world in the climate change negotiations. We want to make sure, this is what she tells me, she wants to make sure it's not just about delegations bringing a youth delegate with them, it's about having them really involved in the negotiations, in the initiatives, and really being hands-on, making sure they have affordable accommodation, making sure they can access the COP. So all that will be taken care of as well.
And in terms of exciting small, young farmers to not migrate?
Yes, again, okay, about the gentleman for Nepal. I think what's important is that countries need to give hope and kind of incentivize in driving the youth to come and do this again. And I think today, more than ever, technology makes it really exciting. Mm-hmm. When I speak to some of the young individuals, and I tell them, when you see the closed system farming and you see what technologies are now available, and it doesn't always have to be high tech, by the way. So we've seen things from low tech level, but really showing the young people that this topic matters on a national level, it has national priority, really drives them forward to look into this. When we created now this market for the UAE farmers and making sure and giving them that segue to supply to the army and the police, it incentivized them because they said, okay, now we have our own market. We're not competing against the trade products, and with that, we're getting excited because we can now start looking at where we can get the funds from. And so now we've kind of taken the supply subsidy, which was there before, to output subsidy, which I think is really important. So we need to now think of, because we were talking about the subsidy systems, going from input subsidy to output subsidy, I think is really important. So you make sure that that's channeled more efficiently, especially as we do this transformation. And the young people, it really, it comes down to food and technology. How can you not love that? And when you see now the aspects of cellular agriculture, what you can do on those aspects, I know these are really futuristic things, but getting them excited to do partnerships, so that's why Aim for C is so important. We also have the hand-in-hand initiative with Zimbabwe. This is, again, the UAE adopting technology, adapting it to hot, arid environments, and taking that then to other countries where we want to also work together with them, because we see us as responsible global citizens, not only to look nationally on food security, globally is so important because we depend on the global food supply. And then I think we had Germany as well. So on the German side, it's technology. We are a country that is already hot, arid. We look at what crops can grow with salt water. And I think a lot of countries are now looking at the UAE as an open lab. We're already experiencing climates that many European countries will experience in many years' time. Looking at mangrove planting, salicornia. Many people don't know what salicornia is. It's like a salty asparagus, but it actually can be, you can give it salt water and it can grow. So that can be a substitute for salt. So on the technology space, we're looking, and also the Food Tech Challenge. This was a global challenge that the UAE launched. I actually just awarded the finalists a few days ago at Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week. And we're driving this as well as Food Tech Valley. This is all because we want to bring innovations from around the world to the UAE to see how we can transform food systems in hot, arid climates, because this is where we'll need the innovations the most.
The Future Lab.
Yes.
Minister Harrison.
Well, it's just so fascinating listening to Mariam here. I think there are actually some advantages, some really significant advantages of almost starting from afresh with a farming sector. In the UK, we've farmed forever, but we need to farm in a new way. And the big change for us has been moving away from area-based payments where farmers are paid per acre or hectare, or actually previously they were paid per head of herd, to paying farmers for environmental good, for mitigating and adapting and the climate change aspect and food security. And speaking to the question about how do we retain farmers, we have that challenge too. I think the average age of a farmer is 59, there or thereabouts. We need to encourage the next generation. I think farmers have been persecuted for emissions, for harm to the environment. They've been following policy that we dictated in government. And I also think that there can be no other industry where the knowledge and experience is passed down the generations, but enabling those future generations to feel a huge amount of pride in what they provide, not just on our plates, but also the environmental good. And it also speaks to the point of animal health and environmental health and biosecurity as well, which is why we work so closely with vets, providing that free veterinary visit to farmers so they can have better ventilated environments for their animals. But ultimately, if we've got purer water, better quality soil, and also cleaner air, those three fundamental things are just required for life and all of the farming sector as well. But celebrating farming is so, so important.
Yeah. We need to build on what we have, not oppose it, and evolve what there is in a rapid direction. It's like the energy sector, right? We're in the middle of a transformation. It will take time, but it's urgent and needs to happen. We need to be in the middle of a food systems transformation in exactly the same way. I think that's where
and it's so exciting.
Yeah, and it's happening.
So
There's a lot of things happening. That's why we need these conversations to stimulate and inspire everyone to not look back, but to look to the next level. Minister Cavalli, your reactions to the questions and comments from the audience.
I wanted to start with the one from Nepal. Our context might be different, but maybe they can pick up a few things. First of all, in our context, we started with the education system. Previously, people have gone to school, been trained to be employed.
Right.
So the previous generation, our grandparents, our parents have always gone to school because they wanted to be employed, to be in an office. But the good thing is the education system is changing. When you go to colleges and universities, you have subjects that are encouraging you to be innovative and to create jobs. Even in the agriculture sector, we have universities and colleges that are specializing in agriculture and farming and agribusiness. So we are making a good transition, which is helping us to have young people interested not to leave the country, as it is happening in Nepal, but to be interested in agribusiness. Firstly. Secondly, incentives. We are incentivizing the investments that they're coming up with. We have the National Economic Empowerment Fund, where they can get loans to invest in business for productivity. That is keeping them in their communities without going to cities and towns to look for jobs. It's helping them to make money. Apart from that, we have a big project now, which is called agriculture commercialization, which the World Bank and now other development partners are pumping in so much money to incentivize or to encourage young people to invest in the agriculture sector. The good thing about it, I don't know if this was intended, but the ripple effect to agriculture commercialization funds, we are now seeing a lot of executives, CEOs, general managers going into farming. So they are leaving the air conditions in their offices. They are now picking up tractors to start farming because they have understood the importance of investing in farming. So we are coming up with some things that are attracting young people, not to go somewhere else to look for jobs, but to invest in agriculture sector and be productive. And not only that, we also have other programs like the Flanders. They are helping us to invest in specifically the youth and women, because these are the two groups of people who are very productive. So we're having a couple of million euros that are being invested to help those young people, encourage them to go into farming, be attracted to it and be productive and stay in the community and be productive where they are. But in the end, we're seeing the whole nation benefiting, because for so many years, we have been producing enough food so that we don't rely on imports of food from other countries, even when we have disasters like last year, but we still manage to harvest adequate food. So that is at least what I can respond to the Nepal, to say invest in them, the education, but also incentives that will attract them to stay and feel that they're being productive.
I think you make another very important point. Modern, innovative, doesn't have to be large scale.
Yeah.
There's always this connotation, oh, modern agribusiness is, large scale. It doesn't have to be. There are thousands and thousands of examples how you can be super creative on 1 hectare or 2. By diversifying, go high value, lots of good stuff out there. Your reactions, Minister, please.
Thank you. A question from Nepal. Nepal and Bangladesh are neighboring country. We have similar economic and social environment, condition, many commonalities. Food security has been a major issue in Bangladesh. Somehow increasing production, we have addressed it. Now, as I said before, that our future challenge is we ensure nutritious food and high value of food. And second, make our agriculture commercial, profitable. It does not remain subsistence, so that farmers can lead a better life. They improve their standard of living. My answer would be almost same. What he said, that you need more investment in agriculture, more incentive. You have to develop, you have to have a good policies, and based on that program, and to implement those programs, you need good strategy. What we have been doing, agriculture, it has been always a rhetoric for politicians, bureaucrats, and everybody. Sometimes what they said, they didn't mean it. They didn't allocate adequate fund. They didn't have good policy. More focus was on manufacturing sector, but eventually it didn't pay off. We didn't get a good return. In agriculture, let me give few examples how we have been doing. For fertilizer, we have been giving subsidy. Present government came into power to govern the country in 2008. It's our third tenure since 2008. We have promised that agriculture will be the #1 priority sector, and will increase food production and ensure food security and bring down the prices of all essential commodities. And accordingly, we took up program, projects, and we have been implementing those. Subsidy, we have been giving $1 billion subsidy for fertilizer. At the moment, fertilizer price of MOP, muriate of potash, is $1,000 per ton. Before Ukraine war, it was 250 or less than that. Last fiscal year, we had to pay additional $2 billion. Altogether, $3 billion as subsidy because of buying fertilizer from international market. Same with phosphate and other fertilizers. And on current fiscal year, we will have to give $4 billion. But at policy level, we decided that whatever may be, but we will not reduce the subsidy for fertilizer, and will not increase the price of fertilizer. so that we can sustain the yield of crops. We cannot go buy food from the global market. Price is also a bit higher, much, much higher than 2 years ago. So that's the policy of the government. Second, to bringing
sorry, we need
younger.
to be mindful of time. We're getting. Huh? We need to be mindful of time. Sorry, we need to wrap this up fairly soon. So.
For youth, to how we have been giving incentive to the young youth, educated youth, to bring as entrepreneurs in agriculture. We have been giving 20% incentive for agricultural export. We have been giving credit to the young farmers without any interest, free of interest. For 8 years, they won't have to pay back if they start a agricultural enterprise. So those are the policies that helped to increase production and productivity. And also too much focus we had on research. So our scientists, they're coming up with new innovation. And to expedite the adoption of those technologies, we are also allocating adequate fund and providing inputs, seeds, and other policy support generously. So those are the reasons for success. Regarding Professor Yunus' program, it's a credit program. He has been giving credit to the local rural poor. It helps a lot, but activities mostly are concentrated to give them credit for initiating some non-farming activities, not much for farming. So Professor Yunus' program did not address much agriculture farming activities. But still it helped to reduce the rural poverty, to start with small businesses in the rural area, non-farm activities. It helped in improving rural economy, reducing poverty. But that is not the main, instrument for our achievement, for our progress in overall economic development, economic growth of Bangladesh.
Very good. I apologize to the two colleagues in the audience who wanted to ask a question. We are out of time. I'm mindful that you have other commitments. I want to thank the panelists for what I thought was a really interesting conversation. So please, let's give them a round of applause. I want to thank the audience for your active participation, for your interest. It wasn't just those of you who raised your hand and spoke, but I could feel there was a genuine interest in the room in this kind of conversation. And the plan is to now have more of these policy action conversations during the course of the year. We at the World Bank and others, UK government, German government and others, and of course UAE and others are keen to support those kinds of conversations so that there is an exchange of good examples, that we learn from each other, that we learn what works, what doesn't, what helps and what doesn't. At the World Bank, if I may say at the end, in the last few years, we have dramatically increased our support for this agenda. We are fundamentally convinced that you cannot deal with the food crisis, you cannot deal with the climate crisis, you cannot deal with the nature crisis, for that matter, unless we invest significantly more in our food systems, but we have to transform them. So we are very committed to the transformation of the food systems. This policy dialogue is one element, but also in terms of funding. We've increased our funding from, I remember when I was Director of Agriculture 10 years ago, we did maybe $1.5 and $2 billion per year. Over the next 15 months, we've committed $30 billion US. So this is a huge and massive increase of the support, and it is very deliberate, focused, not large scale. You know, there's all this notion around, most of the funding that we provide goes to small scale farmers. But the support should be given so that we achieve what we've all just discussed. That then when we have this conversation in 2 years from now, or maybe even already at COP28, that we have a lot more examples where everybody says, yeah, that's the direction of travel. That's what we need to do similar to what happens in the energy sector, that we go from what we did in the past to something that is truly renewable, truly climate positive, truly nature positive, and works for people, society, and the planet. With that, thank you all for joining, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.